All right, now back to our top story covering the trial for the three white men accused of killing Ahmaud Arbery in Brunswick, Georgia. Closing arguments are expected to kick off there in Brunswick this week as early as today. Joining me now is a former prosecutor here with a long list of accomplishments here in the Metro Atlanta area, Daryl Cohen, this morning. To give us some more perspective here, Daryl, tell us right now just what we should expect going into closing arguments. This is a huge national trial.
Well, I think a case like this, you expect the unexpected. What are we going to hear? Because as you, pardon me, as you know, closing arguments are what the lawyers say the evidence was. And those lawyers on both the prosecution and the defense side are going to do everything they can to convince that jury that these men are guilty, or these men are not guilty, or these men are innocent. And don't be surprised at all as to what any of the lawyers have to say. Do not be surprised.
Oh, I feel like that's a little bit of a cliffhanger there, especially with what we saw last week. A lot of us were surprised to see the only defender was Travis McMichael to take the stand. Tell us what you took away from that and how you think that could play. I mean, that dominated the headlines last week with him saying, you know, no, he didn't pose any sort of threat, you know, at that time.
Well, when you're using self-defense as a defense, you have to show that you were in fear, reasonable fear, of being hurt, murdered, damaged physically. I don't think he showed that, but what they were trying to do, is liken him, make him more likable, try to take him and put him in the heads of those 11 men and 12 people, I think, or whatever the jury composure is, the 12 people in the jury, and trying to make them like him. Because juries can do crazy things at crazy times. They can convict him because the evidence is there. They can find him not guilty in spite of the evidence if they like him. There's all sorts of things that juries do, and psychologically, we never quite know. So you try to do everything on both sides.
So I think this is really telling here because we have the verdict that came out of Kenosha, Wisconsin, and Kyle Rittenhouse used the self-defense for killing those two protesters there in Kenosha, injuring one who still survived. What do you think about the eyes being on sort of like that self-defense component here with another national case that dominated with the same angle?
One, I don't see self-defense here, but I understand that's one of the defenses that are being used. And so if it works one place, it may or may not work another. The jurors in Wisconsin and in South Georgia are very different people. They come from different backgrounds. They think differently. They say things differently. I don't know how that's going to play, but again, what did the defense do for Kyle Rittenhouse? They made him look like a boy. They didn't have him look like this tough guy carrying around an automatic weapon. They made him look like a boy. They cleaned him up, likability, and I think the jury looked at him as a boy rather than as a man. Here, in my view, they're trying to make these three defendants look nicer, look more cleaned up, as if they're doing a favor for the neighborhood. That's what they're trying to do. Will it work? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Last question I want to ask. Do you think it was a good move or a mistake for Travis to take the stand?
Well, it's interesting because juries love to hear a defendant take the stand. But the problem is when you take the stand, you open yourself up to cross-examination where you don't look so good. I thought he looked fine on direct examination. I thought he didn't look so fine on cross-examination. And again, we'll see what the jury believes he did or whether or not they like him. Likability, jury nullification. This jury is looking at the evidence or the lack of evidence, making a decision. But there's more to it than just what goes on in the courtroom. Psychological.
Psychological. All right. Well, a lot of eyes are on this one, and we will have a crew. Our Hope Ward will be in Brunswick for us, bringing us the very latest as closing arguments start. And as always, you can stay up to date on the developments on 11alive.com.